Sean Hemeon is an artist living and working in Los Angeles, California. He is a self-taught, accomplished painter. His painting is awesome, whose work draws from various sources, including the founding New York School of Expressionistic Abstract Artists of the 50s and 60s, as well as a contemporary culture and work as a performer. I know what I just said about Sean. There's so much more that he does. He's an actor. He is an awesome artist. And I know when you guys hear this, you will be asking and wondering what else he does. And he's going to share that. So, Sean, even though I said your short bio, I didn't want to let out all the good stuff. I
Sure.
wanted you to introduce yourself and just let us know, your story, your journey to self-care.
It's such a
Because
big, broad question.
we
Yes.
all have a journey, right? Some people call it the awakening. You've probably heard, like I was awakened, something came in my sleep, different things like that. But I chose journey to self-care because I feel that we're always on a journey, right? It doesn't stop, right? We get to learn about ourselves as we get older, things that we're like, I've been doing this all my life. What do you mean? So that's why I chose journey, because I think of journey like a train station, right? You know how there's many stops, and that's how life is, right? Sometimes we'll have to stop, get back on, get off, start the journey, be on the journey for days and doing well, and then life happens. So that's why I kind of chose journey to self-care. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Whatever I missed in the bio, let me know, because I know I didn't say everything.
You did not say everything.
Mhm.
I do have to say, though, I do love the idea of a journey. And, I just spent the week decluttering a bunch of items and things that have been out for a very long time that
Mm.
I always thought would be out. And as I'm decluttering, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to put this away. And I take that as a sign of change, growth,
Yeah,
new chapters, that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
you were talking about journey and coming off on different stations. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I really felt that. I really felt that. So, um, who am I? Oh, you got me on your
Yes.
show.
Who are you?
I don't know. Let me ask somebody else because I'm
Wow.
still trying to figure that one out myself.
Well, the parts of you that you know, and I'm glad you say you're still trying to figure it out yourself. What part of you that you do know?
Sure. Well, actually, I shouldn't even say trying to figure it out. I'm trying to say pay attention and seeing what's revealed to me, because
Wow.
there are so many things that I just had to learn to accept about myself. And then I found more peace in that. And then that sort of dictated what the self-care was. I'm
So true.
I mean, like broad, I had to accept I'm an addict and an alcoholic on a very,
Wow.
base level, or accept my sexuality if I wanted to be happy,
Mhm.
or what I believed spiritually, or or the
Oh,
fact that,
growing up, right?
oh,
Growing up, our
absolutely.
parents threw their beliefs on us. Like, this is what my household is. And then as we,
Oh,
continue, we're like, I like this. I like this.
yeah. Oh, I mean,
Spiritually, right?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, let me tell you, my very Mormon mother, like pilgrim from
Mhm.
Oregon, Utah, somehow met like an Irish Catholic family of fishermen, my dad, who had nothing to do with
Right.
the Mormons, and they just sort of crashed together, and out came 7 kids.
Wow, that's a
So,
big family.
yeah, so I mean, talk about clash of like religious point of views, and and ideas and stuff. And so that's what I was raised in, was just this sort of
Mm.
like, do I follow? I mean, they did try to raise us Mormon, but it was like, do I please mom or do I please dad? That
Wow.
sort of thing. And then having the Mormonism, God bless the Mormons, not going to bash
Yes.
you. God bless you.
No.
That's your
Yes.
belief. My mother still believes. It just does not go well if you slowly start to realize that you are attracted to the same sex. And it's like, that's a big old thing right there.
And it
Especially,
shouldn't be, but I know religiously it is.
It's, I mean, this is a whole other podcast, but opening up about like, they're opening up to it more and more, but regardless, it's like that ship has sailed for me a long time ago. And I guess we're talking spirituality, because my spirituality really developed through the 12-step rooms. I've been sober almost 20 years, and I mean, we'll get into that, but like, a lot of it came through, just the principle, honestly, just the principle of a higher power, however you want to understand it.
To understand it. Absolutely.
And I guess that's coming up right now, because that's like the basis of my self-care. The basis is some kind of spiritual foundation, or another way of looking at it, some kind of deeper connection with myself.
Yeah. It is true. As I started my self-care journey, I was living a life. I was always a social worker, right? So it didn't have nothing to do with like what I was doing. I was always helping people. But self-care to me just became different, right? And then I lost my mom and started questioning, like, God, if you're taking these people and they're going to heaven, then the word ancestors is a real word, right? And then, God, you can't do this by yourself. I mean, all the believers, right? Think of all the believers. How can you help? And then I started going, the universe, God, my ancestors who are no longer here with me, the pivots. And then I just started looking at life and the way things go when it came to my spirituality different.
I mean,
how else? Different lens.
George, with the lens that, how do you explain the massive things that are obviously way out of our hands, like here in Los Angeles with the fires, having nothing to do with that by any choice of my own? I mean, how do you explain the purpose of those? By other means, I mean, the only way I can do it is by believing in some kind of benevolence, some kind of, we came from love. It's all about some high, which gives it a higher purpose of something. Yeah, it gives it.
So true.
When I think of self-care, it's almost synonymous with setting boundaries for me. It's just kind of accepting, paying attention to what's being revealed to me about who I am, and then setting boundaries around that, and not in a. It can be, but in a just like that's not for me. This is for me. That's all. I mean,
yeah. I like this. I don't like what you like. It's okay, and it's okay, right?
Absolutely, it's okay.
Boundaries go with the word. It's okay. It's okay. In my book, I wrote the book called "The Hard Truths About Self-Care," and in my book, I wrote, "Boundaries without consequences is pointless." Because everybody talk about boundaries, right? It's like the buzzword, like, that's my boundary. That's my boundary. But in the same sentence or a week later, you're saying, that was my boundary, but you crossed it and you keep crossing it, right? You hear that a lot, right? People don't respect my boundaries, but just think of it, a boundary with a consequence. If you do this, I'm going to leave your circle. Like, this circle is no longer for me. This table is no longer for me. Even when people were like, if I leave a table, I'll build my own table. But there's another table out there for you. You just got to know what you accept, what you don't accept, what you like and what you don't like, and build that confidence muscle within yourself. And then people will respect your boundaries, because there will be a consequence. I'll no longer be your friend. I will love you from a distance. But my world is over here now. So I truly get it.
That's very well said. Obviously, you should write a book, and did write a book about that. Because that's exactly it. And it's terrifying to do at first. Terrifying to do. Because you think you're going to be left alone. You think you're going to be left behind. All these things. But on the other side of that fear, the world, it's almost like, you got to teach the world how to treat you. But I have to learn how I need to treat. I have to treat myself that way first.
Self good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the world, the world, I like to subscribe to the belief that the external world is just a reflection of my internal world. So if I just hate everything, if I'm just, everything's a problem, I'm the problem. I hate myself, that's the short way of saying that.
So true.
Cause I grew up.
That's absolutely true.
I grew up believing that like I was the problem. It was my fault that my mother was depressed. It was, my fault that, my dad was so angry all the time. I mean, the poor man had to work his ass off to help pay for 7 kids. Of course he was pissed off. My mom had her own fair share of, her family of origin, her own fair share of things. But as a kid, you don't know better. And so it's just this, you just look up and you're just like, why is she so sad? Or why is he so angry? It must be my fault, and the desperation, the need to be seen and validated was set in pretty hardcore then. And then on top of that, with 6 other siblings, it was like a Colosseum arena fight, like a Roman times, like who could get my mom's attention the most. And
yeah.
And I won.
The 7 and beyond.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I beat my brothers out because, as a little gay boy, it's like I'm like more emotional or sensitive or allowed to be or whatever. And so my mother clinged on to that and made me like her companion versus my dad. So it was like,
wow.
So you can imagine.
All brothers?
Oh no, there's 5 boys and 2 girls, 2 younger sisters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 4 girls. They made it through, but you can imagine then when I'm 13 and the hormones are kicking in and I'm realizing that I'm a little bit different, which one meant that I was cursed with the disease of gayness I must have done something to God that he just hated me so much. And I didn't know what it was, but he hated me so much that he cursed me with that. And then 2, it's like, oh no, I'm never going to win my mom over. I'm never going to make her happy. And so it was miserable from then on, it was just.
To you, internal, that was like internal misery, right? You're not understanding.
Yeah, well,
and things exactly. Like that.
Oh no 13-year-old should want to die. I had migraines every other week. I had ulcers. Like I was a mess. I mean, granted, I'm 6'4", and I was like probably shooting up to 6'4" at that time too. So I had, the normal physical growth, but just the sheer amount of terror and panic I was feeling. Because I mean, again, imagine it's like not only was I betraying my mother, but somehow I existed in a world run by a God who I somehow made so angry with me that he cursed me with the worst thing. So suddenly I was like profoundly alone. And that was kind of the basis of the next 10 years.
So once you got older and you realized, look, it's okay to love a human, whether male or female, right? Because we should be raised to love all humans, right? And I know the Mormon faith does believe that, but you were loving of the same sex, and I feel it's fine, right?
Right.
I my closest friends, I don't care what you choose, long as you choosing love and not hate.
Fair enough.
That's my only boundary. Don't choose hate. If you do that, we can't be friends, but I don't care, and society shouldn't care. But the battle with a lot of teenagers and stuff who are experience this is really hard. And then I work in geriatrics, and the men who couldn't come out, that's older now. Believe you me, I have he's about maybe 70. And when I talk to this man at work, he's like, Janelle, I love men and I never could love men. And as I'm like, yes, you can. He's like, no, my family won't love me. They won't take care of me while I'm here. I said, you can love men. And it's during session. So, of course, I would never tell his family. And I was like, yes, you can. I'm giving you the permission to be okay with who you are. You have my permission. and he'll say, come over here, I gotta tell you something. And he was able to download porn and things like that, and it's his choice, right? And he said it, since you've been working here, I smile more.
Oh.
So, as I met this older man who still can't be who he is, I just feel so sad. It's like you're trapped in a mind that's not really your mind. Like you got to think and feel a certain way for society.
For a society to accept you. I mean, there's just so much fear and loneliness there. That is so sad. It's almost as if, like, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I feel like our purpose is to be the most authentic version of ourselves, which is all of this, which is everything we're talking about. I mean, how amazing would that be? Well, I mean, how amazing would that be if that was just our sole purpose, just focusing on finding out and understanding and accepting who we authentically are? We would be so much happier. I mean, obviously I'm smiling and laughing while I'm talking to you. So everything I'm sharing is like, I went on this journey with my Mormon mother, and it does end on a happy note. She walked me down my very gay wedding. She walked me down the aisle. She was overjoyed, and she loves my husband more than me. Like, so people change. But let me tell you something though about boundaries. Let me tell you something about boundaries, because look, I got off crystal meth, which was one of the hardest things. I got off all kinds of drugs, but one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life, and again, I got off all the hard drugs, was about 2015, 2014. My youngest brother was living with me, and being connected to our mother was still a major problem because it was still abusive in just not the healthiest. It was, for allowing her to mother us was not self-care, with her judgments and shame comments and guilt. And so we internally were going to detach from her as the mother archetype. We were going to still be in her presence and allow her to mother, but internally we were going to continue to like forgive her in our minds, but just detach from her. She could sense this the first time, and it blew up, destroyed Thanksgiving. And so what happened was it accelerated it to the point where my brother and I looked at each other and we're like, we can't talk to them ever again. So the hardest thing for us was not talk. Subsequently, it happened, because of our siblings too. But we stopped talking to our mother, and our family. It was almost like the mafia. Like, you don't leave. Like, and you don't leave. And the problem with that is people can feel like they can treat you however they want. They don't respect your boundaries. They don't respect your space. They don't do any of that. And so when you actually leave, it rocks their world. It rocked my siblings' world
because they lose control. You took control from them,
and said, "No more of this. No more of this." And it was. I never thought I couldn't have done it without my little brother. I'm sure likewise. And so like we banded together and we just did this thing, and it was incredibly hard. And for a couple of years there, I believed I didn't have a mother. But very naturally started coming back in a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And here we are like 5 years after we got back together, she walked me down the aisle. And our relationship is, I've never loved her more. I actually enjoy her company. Like, she's very, all of my siblings, I have profoundly new relationships with them. We respect each other in a different way. We communicate in a different way. Granted, we're getting older, but regardless,
it took the breakaway, right? And sometimes as a therapist, I teach that, breakaways, the grass isn't green on the other side. Get away from that mindset. The grass can be green on the other side, right? For you and your brother, it was like, okay, we're doing this, we're doing this for all the right reasons. And that breakaway most definitely grew the Hearts founder, and most definitely gave each party, right? Because it always takes two or more to tango. And with that, each person got to grow. And that's what actually brought the unity together. I chuckled because you said, my mom loves my husband, but if she loves me. And I was like, that means that you're with the right person.
Yeah.
That's what that means. When a mother solidifies it, that means that is your person.
I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was saying, so you did do it, right? You did it right by her.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, looking back, it's wild. Like life is wild. This crazy journey that we're on, and journey of self-care. It's just where I've ended up, and I dreamed of working in Hollywood, and now I work in Hollywood. It's like, wait, what? No, that's just that's not supposed to. What are you talking about?
You dreamed of it, so you spoke it to an existence before it actually occurred. The dreams, our visions, those things come to fruition because that's what's on our mind. So actor, you said actor. I did not say that in your bio because I wanted you to touch on, you said actor in Hollywood. Like, what does that mean? Like, what were you on shows?
That means
Broadway.
That's my husband. I do more. I mean, I do theater, but I do more TV and film. That means I just spent all last fall working opposite Angela Bassett for a number of episodes on 911, as an example. And talk about, Lord, I love that woman. Talk about
Isn't she powerful?
I mean, it obviously watching her work.
Yes, and I never seen her before. I would love to.
And I had to match her because the character I was doing was had a higher authority than her. Was making her I turned out to not be the nicest person. But talk about this is aspirational for me, because talk about self-care. So she's number one on the call sheet, which means she's the number one cast member. And usually number one on the call sheet sets the tone. They just set the tone for how it's going to feel,
the flow of it,
the filming, just the energy around and everything. And she sets a tone of extreme professionalism and like, we are here to work. I mean, that's just how she carries herself, and everybody around her, like they're like planets orbiting her, fulfilling this vision of like, we are here to work. Like, she has set up the environment by who she is to provide her with her own self-care by supporting her, because she has the most lines, the most scenes, the most work to do, essentially, really. So I just found that inspiring, for me, for one day when I'm number one on the call sheet. Like, what tone does that set with the other actors you're working with the whole environment? Like, you're, those long days when you just want to go home. It's like, hey guys, let's do this thing. But it was quite, I thought my self-care game was pretty good, but just literally just her self-care energy was like some other level. And I was like, damn, I got far to go. I got far to go.
Wow. So was that the only show you played in, or was there some others?
Oh no, I started in soap operas, As the World Turns. I've worked on Criminal Minds, long time ago. I can't believe True Blood was a long time ago. Called Rake. So that's Hollywood.
Yes. And how's it out there in Hollywood right now? Is it horrific? Do you live close near the fires?
I live like in between. There's the Palisades fires, and then there's the Eaton fires, Altadena, Pasadena, and over by the ocean, Palisades. And we had evacuation scare. Like one of the first few nights we had a fire build up like right next to us. And so there was a whole thing there. But I personally am okay. I'm in my place. I've had quite a few friends lose their homes or businesses, and people are masking up around here just because the air quality and
it's horrible.
Yeah. So January was this collective anxiety, grief that you could just feel everywhere. Still is kind of there. Just sort of like a lot of people. I was in New York for 9/11 and the energy, it reminds me of that energy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Very sad.
Yeah. I mean, with 9/11, with 9/11, there was still the fear. Well, I guess the fear of another.
I still have it. I have not gone back in them towers, and I'm like, look, it happened twice. I'm just gonna stay away.
Makes sense.
But that's that fear, right? I mean, I know security is there. They learned, through each tragic event, you learned something, right?
Sure.
So I can imagine that the world is more equipped, but it's just the thought of it, the day of the sadness. So I completely understand.
Yeah. So, So,
are you guys back to work? Are you working and everything now, or are you in the studio?
So I'm my character was put in prison, so I'm waiting for him to either come out or use me in some other way. So I'm in a in between place. I don't as an actor and not a producer, you sometimes have no idea. But so I'm, I auditioned for other things, and that was such a nice intro with my artistic passions.
Yes.
And so, I'm in my home studio painting and writing. As you know, I reached out to you because I have the book, so I'm writing as well. And
yes. When do you think the book is going to come out?
My hope is later this year, but there's there's back and forth. I didn't want to wait for that, which is why I reached out. When I actually have the publication date, I'm totally gonna let you know and be like, remember that guy? Here's his book. It's out. And
of course.
And I haven't even. I mean, I don't want this to be all about the book, but I haven't even
No, it's fine.
In between all that. Little gay Mormon boy and recovery in Hollywood, I decided to start a drug dealing business that became so popular. The federal government wanted a piece of it, aka I got arrested, and then they were in so many words, they were like, you should keep doing what you're doing in order to get us something bigger, so you don't have to go to prison. And and then that led me down some very dangerous paths, ultimately encountering somebody who said they worked for the Russian mafia. And I was about to start, but I was like, I watched enough movies where I was like, I'm not a rat. I'll never live with that shame. And obviously I am giving you the spark, the very abridged summary of the story.
What?
I'm really skimming over everything. I'm just hitting the big notes, but obviously I'm not in prison, and I am sober, so there is an ending to that. But
you touched on sobriety, so I do want to touch on that. That's so important, and I'm glad that you said you are sober. 20 years, right? 20 years. I lost my dad to fentanyl and tramadol drug overdose. I was the one who found him, and that's what made me start my not-for-profit to feed people who suffer from mental illness and drug addiction. And the reason why I went in that realm is because during the addiction and stuff with my own father, I remember going in drug houses. My mother was like, I can't deal with this with your father, and she would kick him out, bring him back in. But those days when he was out, she would cook dinners, and I would go in crack houses, and I'd never been hurt. I don't know what angel protected me. I went in those horrible houses, like at 7, 8, 9, and 10 years old, and I would take my dad food. So recovery is like you made it through. I must tell you, these drugs are different from 20 years ago. They are killing people and hurting people. And, that's part of my platform. Like, how do I reduce the harm? So I don't really tell people don't do drugs because my father did drugs all my life. And we've been saying all my life, don't do. So I do focus on reducing the harm. And what does that look like when we talk about reducing the harm? That could be given fentanyl strips, xylazine strips, Narcan, and things like that. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about that journey of your life,
Sure.
because that was part of, that train. You got off some stops.
I got up. Well, thank God I'm sober now, because
Yes.
I was before fentanyl, and apparently the last 10 years the meth has just the strength of it has just amplified.
Yes, and now they're putting xylazine in it, which is the horse tranquilizer. So you don't want to touch anything.
No, one of the one of, if not the main reason I actually wrote the memoir, was because I was so messed up and so high that I was unable to save somebody's life. I could have, but I waited too long to apply CPR. And it was very classic movie scenario. I mean, we dropped his body at the hospital and ran away. The devastating part was, 2 weeks later, I was the last phone number that he called. And I only had met the guy that weekend, but he had my number on his phone bill. His mother called me, and I'm still height of my addiction. And she just begged me to know what happened to her son. Begged me. And I'm paranoid, and I think it's, some police officers trying to scam me or something. So I hung up on her, and it is one of 20 years later, I mean, still a major regret. So the book is also kind of like a message in a bottle,
Right.
to this mother and other mothers, like, this is what happened to your son. I am your son, but also there's a chapter in there about like what happened to her son.
It's her son.
So recovery for me.
Well, what was the start? Where did addiction start with you? At what age?
Oh Lord. So my eldest brother, very good Mormon, off on his mission, BYU, the whole thing. The two other brothers, their addiction started early. And so seeing that, I was like at 13 with them and being like, can I try the alcohol? And then at 13, experimenting with weed. And then at, 14, 15, I was tall. So I got a really basic fake ID I lived outside Washington, D.C. from Georgetown. I got a really basic fake ID.
I think all of us is guilty for the fake IDs.
Yeah. And I could go buy cigarettes. So I was the cool guy. So, I mean, I was addicted to cigarettes from 13 to like 23. So being the closeted, I was a walking cliche. Like, I was homecoming court, football captain, like popular jock who was doing his best friend all 4 years of high school. Extreme pain. So I was blacking out with alcohol by the time I was 18 or 19, just blacking out. That was all I wanted. And I was in like a lot of pain. So, but when that relationship ended tragically at 19, and then I found heavier drugs at the clubs, I was like, honestly, it was like, I really believed that I was like, this feels so good. Why don't people just do this all the time? Which is, of course, something.
It was you escaping from trauma, from traumatic events, right?
Absolutely.
Don't want to deal with it, right?
Don't want to deal with it. And so that was about 21, and I want to get to recovery. So I will just say from 21 to 23, I dated the dealer, started using every day. And the last year and a half of my use, I forgot what it was like to draw a sober breath. I was high. Meth was my baseline. There's other party drugs like GHB that would like be my antidepressant baseline. And then if I really wanted to get like have a good time, I would put they call it Molly these days, but it was ecstasy back then. And so I would do that to actually like feel a high, and it was all about maintaining the high. And that's why I dealt more and more drugs until I got arrested. Yeah. And the lies were none of the consequences would happen to me. They all happened to me. And the final lie was, well, I'm young, I can stop when I want. And when it came time to thank God for this gal, she was like my best friend out there. She was like my running mate. 2 weeks before my 23rd birthday, after my case was dismissed, and I should have obviously stopped because I was one lucky son of a bitch. We're living in an abandoned apartment that would flood out because it would rain. And she turns to me 2 weeks before my 23rd birthday, and she was really scared to tell me this. And she was like, so I think I want to go to rehab. And I remember looking at her and just honestly thinking this. And then I say, you can do that? Like, to me, rehab was like for train spotting. You know, at that time was the heroin addicts in the haunted house at the top of the hill, let alone I'm in an abandoned apartment because it would flood out and rain on an air mattress, you know, smoking an 8-ball, like $400 or $500 of drugs a day. And I'm like, you can go to rehab. So that started, which was absurd. And then 2 weeks later, like I said, it was my 23rd birthday, and I thought I could stop and I could not stop. And that shattered all illusions. And a small window opened, and I leapt through that. I reached my hand through that window, and I picked up the phone, and I called my mother, and they came and they got me. This is all in the book. I'm just rushing through it because what's not in the book is what happened after that, you know, because I did, you know, I slept for 2 weeks, and then I went to a 28-day treatment in Northern Virginia. And then I did an outpatient program at Whitman Walker Clinic in Washington, D.C. for about a year. And then I hightailed it out to Los Angeles because, you know, acting was my thing.
Knew what you're going to be an actor.
I was like, well, my counselor at Whitman Walker he's a phenomenal human being. And we still Facebook, you know, message each other. He was just like, you got to get out there and start acting. You got to start living your life. And you know, lucky for me, the 12-step recovery scene in Los Angeles is freaking phenomenal. You know, in my first week arriving here, one of my all-time favorite bands, the lead singer, I'm sitting in a meeting, and then I look to my right, and he sits next to me and introduces himself. But it's an AA meeting, so I can't tell you who he is.
Yeah,
you know, I can't say any of that. But it was so moving because it was so like, oh, if this guy's here, I can do this. It was very inspiring. It was very inspiring.
Yes, of course.
But the first 5 years, I went to like 2 meetings a day because it was it was more. You
needed it.
Oh, I mean, because it was like I didn't know how to do anything. Like I wasn't that I was even rebuilding my life. I was building a life. I was just existing. I was such a shell of a human that was so carved out from years of shame and self-loathing and self-abuse, you know, all the things, you know, that I inflict upon myself, that I just needed time to just be, to just exist, to just feel my feelings. And that was the first 5 years. And then, you know, there was a good 10 of now giving that back. I remember so clearly in those first couple of years, I was at a meeting, and it was a big meeting, mixed meeting. And there was this giant bear of a man. I mean, huge beard and everything. And he's sobbing from the podium. So if people don't know, like in 12 steps, like usually there's a speaker, somebody who's talking about their journey, what it was like, what happened, and what it was like now. And this man was sobbing for the how much gratitude he had for being sober, because his sister was still in active addiction so bad that she was selling her 6 and 8-year-old son to whoever would pay for
Right.
sexual favors in order for her to have more money for drugs. He was so grateful that he was sober that he could adopt these 2 boys.
Wow.
And I just remember sitting there listening to him, and I'm like, I'm such a piece of shit because I've been thinking about myself for the last 5 years. Wait, this is what it's really about. What am I? And honestly, it shifted my. You've been doing this naturally, but for me, I needed.
Yeah, I'm just the daughter of an addict.
Yes. You, Al-Anon. I don't know if that's your jam, but
Alan. Yeah.
But for me, it was a pivot outward, a pivot. Trauma can make us just selfish because we get triggered all the time, and we have so much. It makes us selfish because we're protective, because makes us triggered and stuff. But it was one of the first times where I was like, what am I doing with my life as far as like being of service and looking outward and taking the focus off of myself really helped out with so much of my anxiety and worry. And that really started a new journey with, I started sponsoring and doing all the things that we do in there.
Right.
Being an example of
what could happen, right? The change when you focus on sobriety, the change, and how does that look, right?
Yep. So, wait, what was the original question?
We're on your journey from the addiction, right? You come back, you're on that journey, and then what happens, right? You say you became a sponsor, you're helping out, and now do you reach out to those drug programs, that drug program, those 2, the outpatient and the inpatient that you are in to this day? Do you?
It's funny you say that. I am, because of the book. I am, saying, hey, is there something that we could do with this, just to let you know that, look, this is where I'm at now. I'm clearly a success story for you guys. It's funny you say that. I was literally just looking at their contact info today.
This is a success story, right? A story that you could tell. I know you were in the rooms. That's what they call NA and AA, the rooms. You were in the rooms, just for our listeners to say, what room were you in? You were in the rooms, and someone who you looked up to was actually sitting by you. Of course, we're going to keep them nameless. Was sitting next to you, and then you heard a speaker speak about, them selling their sister selling their children for sexual favors, which is all part of the addiction. And I always tell people, people don't wake up and say, I'm going to be an addict. Things happen. Even if it does start out from partying, it never ends well. And during that journey, struggling with the addiction comes, heartache and pain, right? From our loved ones and stuff. And that's why, it's a they call it a family disease, right? It's not just one person affected by this disease. My question to you would be, what are you doing now? I know you have 20 years clean, but what does the now look like?
So there's two things that in my years of being in recovery from trauma, from addictions, that shape my life today. And one is, I just, there was a coworker a few weeks ago who took his own life, and he wasn't in recovery. Beautiful human being. When you hear about this, you just wish the person knew how loved they were, but he did not know how to ask for help. And the one big thing, and this is totally related to self-care. I mean, self-care is essential to asking for help. Being able to do that has been my success, especially my success as an actor, is all about asking for help. If you don't ask, you don't get kind of someone said to me in the career, and I believe that. And the help,
Yes.
the asking for help is to yourself, is to your higher power, it's to your family, it's to your friends, it's just get the feelings out of you, talk to somebody, ask for help. That was the big one. And then the other one was understanding, through the years. I'm going to make a t-shirt, by the way, that says there's a program for that, because there is a 12-step program for everything. Just list it.
Yes.
People have made it an addiction, and there's a program for that. And I've investigated a few of them through the years, and just to be like, okay, what do they say about money here, or like sex and relationships? Oh, that's fascinating. Like, really, I mean, the money one was great.
It is.
It told me how to build my, financial future. But anyway, what I've realized doing all of these programs is essentially the core is the same. And for me, that core is based on shame, however generated from my childhood. And what happens is I feel so bad about myself, and that's projected onto everything in my life. And I feel so bad about everything in my life. So what's the point of self-care? Like, why would I why? Like, I'm last on my list. Why would I do that? Because I don't internally care about myself, which makes the drugs like, oh my God, whatever drug it is, the chocolate cake or the beer or the meth, like, oh my God, that feels amazing.
Yeah.
I feel more powerful. I feel like, oh yeah, I can totally do self-care now. I feel like I can set boundaries now. I can do all these things. And then when I come off of it, it's like, oh, the shame is compounding, and it hits me back. And then I want to do it again. And then the shame hits me. And so that's the addictive cycle, is what I realize. And so for me, what my self-care looks like today has almost been like this radical self-acceptance, meaning that whatever has happened, or even any choices I've made, whatever is occurring in my life, my number one job is to find a way to be okay with it. They do say in some of our literature somewhere, like, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And it is profound, because
it is.
Because if I find a way to be okay with what is happening, essentially I'm finding a way to be okay with myself.
And accepting it. Like, I'm accepting that I love chocolate cake when I need to stress eat, right? Damn. Radical acceptance. It's through dialect. Yeah, me too. Chips and dip. Oh my goodness. It's our comfort food, right? We use it as a crutch. We're stressed out. You know what? I'm going to get a piece of chocolate cake. It'll make it all better. We use radical acceptance and DBT as well, dialectical behavior therapy. And it's used along with motivational interviewing when working with people who struggle with substance use. It's just basically saying what I hear you say, so that you can accept whatever it is that you've done on that journey, or what are you doing now, right? Accepting that I'm no longer there. I'm now over here. I'm in California. I'm an actor. I'm an artist. I'm writing my book. I'm happily married to my husband. And that is what you're accepting now.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, that sounds like it's really easy to accept, but
and it's not. It's
correct.
Life is not easy.
No,
no.
We have
life is no way.
We still have our, our problems. We still, it's still like over there. Meaning like, I'm not there yet, which is such a lie to myself to do. The other thing that I do the other two things I do for self-care, for daily self-care is yes, the 12 steps did teach me meditation and a version of that. So mindfulness, meditation, however, I can incorporate that. And then I don't know about you or your listeners, but I was raised by a man who would had no awareness about what he was saying or his thoughts. And so he was almost like stuck on a complaint loop. Like, there was always something for my dad to complain about. Always something. It didn't matter what it was. I mean, he could be at the finest restaurant, like 3 Michelin stars, and there was something wrong with it. There's always just something wrong. And I adopted this whole point of view on the world that suddenly I'm watching him in me, and I'll complain about the most stupid things. And I'm just like, this is just something I got. This is just a habit of thought and stuff. So as a deterrent to that, as like a practice to change my thoughts and therefore my worldview, I do gratitude lists. I may say it out loud. I handwrite it down. But I was like, before I was like, affirmations, gratitude list. What's the point? But now understanding it from this point of view of being like, oh, no. My habituated mindset, thought pattern adopted from my father is on a complaint loop. I can change that by adopting a new habit, because thoughts are just habits, by a new habit of like looking for things to be grateful for. And over time, you know, the habit loop has overcome, the gratitude habit loop has overcome the other complaining loop. This guy likes to if I'm tired, it comes in. Hungry, angry, lonely, this guy comes in, he's like, F everything.
F everything.
Yeah, it's just like, so I try to start my mornings with the gratitude guy and just be like, oh, we're good now. And then, I don't know, something happens with the dogs or my husband and I'm like, what do you mean? But that, you know, life is, that's life.
You're balancing, like, and it's called like work-life balance. It's like balancing our life, right? To know that we are human. We're going to have those emotions. It's going to be things to complain about, but just, you know, reverting the mind and say, you know what? I'm grateful because I'm here. I'm grateful I could open a refrigerator. I'm grateful I could eat. I'm grateful for love. I'm grateful to be on a wake up list. I'm always, when I wake up in the morning, I'm very grateful. I don't ask for anything. I feel like, you know, as women, we're always said we're nags, but just be able to say, you know what, I'm grateful for being on a wake up list. I'm grateful to have this glass of water to break my nightly fast. Because, you know, when we're sleeping, we're not eating. We may be dreaming of eating, but we're not physically eating. So just being grateful for water, because when you think of it, nobody has these things, right? You know, I see people go in for bottled water, like simple things. Oh, they only have Poland Spring. They don't have Deer Park. And I'm in my head now that I started this self-care journey. I'm like, there's people without Poland or Deer Park. Be grateful it's water. But I'm telling you, people will complain about the littlest thing. It's like going in a store and you're asking the store, why don't you have this? And in my head, I'm like, well, you would have it if you open up your own store and have everything you need, right? And then they'll start complaining, and you're just like, look, they don't have this, but they have this, right? Be grateful that they have an option.
Exactly.
Gratitude is important. Gratitude.
Oh, it's everything.
Is important.
It changes your worldview, and if your worldview changes, it actually changes your world.
Yes. So I gotta ask two things. One is, where are you at now, and how do you see yourself progressing? Is it still in the acting field? Is it becoming a producer? Is it more focusing now on your artwork, because that's also, you know, your passion as well, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, the art started 10 years ago. I ran an art gallery and I just fell into that. And then I fell into painting. My mother does paint. My oldest brother is a painter. So it's in the family, but
it's in your bloodline.
And so when I started painting, it was honestly, it was just for me. It was all for me. And then it just evolved. And then the last couple of years, I'm at a place with it where it's like, oh yeah, I could, you know, and I sold it early on, but now really pursuing it, you know, it's something that will always kind of just be there. I feel like my childhood dream is to be on the big screen. Has always been, you know, in the 90s when I was watching all the action heroes with my dad and being like, I can do that. I want to do that. And so the dream, you know, my husband and I would like to start a family soon. And in our situation, that is, you need quite a bit of finances to actually do that. And so the more immediate dream is to, you know, become an actual series regular on a TV show or a hit show,
Yes.
just to really establish that, and then to build from there. And as a writer, yes, I have my own scripts, my own ideas. So I ultimately, just being an actor, it just doesn't, it's not, I need to be a part of the whole creative picture. And so there will be a time when I am absolutely creating my own content and acting in it, writing it, all of that.
That's some great stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And the book is happening now. And if that turns into its own sort of feature, and
give us the name of the book.
The book is titled "The Good Little Drug Lord."
Wow. I can't wait till it come out. I'm most definitely going to get it. And for my listeners, I know for a fact, once the book come out, Sean is going to come back on our show.
Absolutely.
And tell us all about it and where we could get the book. Are you planning on having the book where books are sold, or are you planning on just selling it through your website?
Oh, no. The reason I am so sort of ambiguous about the dates and stuff is because I'm dealing with big publishers. No, this is going to be everywhere. I openly want it to be everywhere, to reach as many people as possible, because to me, it would be incredible if I could find this mother who just wants to know what happened to her son. And I know what happened to her son, and I just want to find her one day. So I need to.
And maybe if you put that old phone number that she called you from, maybe that will be the ticket.
Maybe I could do that.
If you remember the number,
I tried to find. To be fair, I tried to find her a year later when I got sober.
Of course,
yeah,
of course. No, I'm just saying, if you remember the number, that could be another inch.
Yeah. No, that's helpful
for you to. Yeah. So before we end this live, I need you to either leave a quote with someone who is just struggling or who is in sobriety, right? Still learning the journey of life, right? And how does that, if it's a quote that you live by or something you want to say, do you mind telling us?
What's a good, I do say often that even 20 years later, that the decision to get sober is still the best decision I've ever made out of anything ever. I stand by that. But somebody who, please ask for help. Imagine if somebody asked you for help, what would you do? Like, you wouldn't shove them, you would help them. So thinking that nobody wants to help you is your diseased thinking. And if you need the help, there's affordable care, there's free help. Please. I'm just inspired by this friend, a couple who he had, he was a brilliant actor, beautiful. It was like, come on.
It's so many people in the world struggling. Struggling from what's going on, within our own life, struggling with politics, just struggling in general. And there is help out there. So many people are starting a podcast, which is a great tool to add. Some people are, just too ashamed. We have YouTube University now. Those are great tools. And some may not have a phone, but if you walk in your closest library anywhere, there is most definitely help out there and help available to all of us.
Yeah.
All we do is gotta reach out, get the help, and it's right there. So Sean, I hope that you continue on your journey. Your journey is your journey only for you. Only for you. It is your journey. Live life to the fullest. I can see that all your dreams, your hopes, all of that is going to most definitely come true as long as you continue to do the work. If you don't do the work, it's not going to happen. So we call it journey. There is a journey, and you're on this train. Anyone listening, you guys are on this train. There will be pit stops. There'll be wrong stops. You'll get lost, but always remember that train is waiting for you to get back on it, and you can do it. So to everyone, have an amazing evening, day, night, whenever you're listening to this podcast, on purpose. And Sean, thank you for trusting in the JS Self-Care Mind, Body, and Soul podcast to feature your story, because it is your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so lovely. Thank you.
Yes.